Hi everyone, and welcome to video number 15 on the Nazi Party and the growth of the Nazi Party in Germany. Now, in the previous video we were looking at all of the economic problems facing Germany 1929 to 1932. And in this video, maybe you should try and watch them together and link them together, because in this video we're looking at what effect those problems had on the support for the Nazi Party in Germany in those years, 1929 to 1932. Now, great song from my youth, Johnny Nash, 1972. I was 11 years old. And the song, there are more questions than answers. But, ladies and gentlemen, sorry for the terrible singing, by the way, but when times are bad, when people are facing huge problems, they want answers. And what I'm going to try and show you in this video is that Hitler offered people solutions. He offered people answers at a time when many of them were desperately looking for answers. So that's an important point to start with. Now, let's start with the facts. I have here a chart, and it shows the elections in Germany. 1928, 1930, July 1932, and September 1932. 4 elections in the space of 4 years. What was happening to people's votes in those elections? Well, let's take a look. The first group, the first party, the Social Democrat Party, that was the party of Gustav Stresemann. Now, if you see here, you can see a clear pattern. They were the biggest party, 1928, 153 seats. But then a pattern emerges, ladies and gentlemen. As the elections continue, they lose seats. 153, 143, 133, 121. Underneath here, we see the number of people voting for those parties. 9.1 million, 8.6 million, 8 million, 7.2 million. So they are losing 2 million voters in those 4 years. And as a percentage, look, very clear. 30%, 25%, 22%, 20%. They've lost 10% of the voters, the 2 million. Well, here's a question. Who are those people going to vote for now? Well, let's have a look at the next party. The KPD, the Communist Party, a left-wing party. And again, we see their figures. 54 seats, 77 seats, 89 seats, 100 seats. So they almost double the amount of MPs in the Reichstag. They double. Again, the amount of people voting for them. 3.2 million, 4.6 million, 5.3 million, 6 million voters. So again, the amount of people voting for the Communist Party doubles. And you see their percentage of the vote rising 11, 13, 15, 17. So, So some people start to vote for the communists. But the party which had the biggest increase, the NSDAP, the National Socialist Deutsche Arbeiter Party, known as the Nazi Party. Look at their figures. 1928, 12 seats. Not even 1 million voters, 800,000. Under 3% of the vote, 1928. But look what happens to Hitler's support. 12 seats, 107, 230, then a dip to 196. People voting for him, just under 1 million, 6.4 million, 13.8 million, then a dip to 11.8. Percentage, 3% of the vote, 18%, 37%, then the dip to 33. There's a dip here in this September election. because some people were put off by the violence. Oh, excuse me. Some people were put off by the violence on the streets. But the general trend, there is a huge increase in support for the Nazi Party. There are the facts. You cannot argue with the facts. Of course, the question for us is why? What was happening? Why did so many people think that the Nazi Party were the answers? There are more questions than answers. They wanted answers, and many, many millions thought that Hitler had the answers. Some people, as we've seen there, went to the communists, the hammer and sickle there of Stalin. They followed the Russian idea. Left wing, they thought they were giving the answers. But more and more people turned to the swastika of Hitler, to the right wing. They thought that that was the answer. Why? What was going on at this time? Well, here's a few things which hopefully will explain. Let's start with the central figure. Let's start with Adolf Hitler. I've mentioned before, he was a great speaker. He had charisma. But what was he saying? What was his message? Well, the key message was hope. Many people had suffered in the Depression after Wall Street crash. The wages had declined, unemployment was rising. Remember this? Well, let's start with that one. When times were going well for Germany, things went bad for Hitler. But flip it over. When times were going bad for the Germans, terrible things were happening, that was good for Hitler. He was providing what people thought were the answers. A great speaker, very charismatic, and he was sending out a message that they wanted to hear. And his message? Basically, hope. Vote for me. I will make your life better. I will be a strong leader. I will restore Germany. I will restore law and order. Well, to people whose lives were in chaos, who saw violence on the streets, who had lost money, who had lost hope, this was a powerful message. He's promising a better life, a better future, and people wanted to hear that. So by 1930, 300,000 people had joined the Nazi Party as members. By 1933, this had risen to 850,000 members. People were looking towards Hitler. They saw him almost as Superman. At the same time that he's offering hope, Hitler was also very, very clever, because he was also offering a scapegoat, someone or something to blame. And when things are going bad, people want to blame someone. They don't want to blame themselves. They want to say, it's your fault that my life is rubbish. And Hitler offered them the scapegoat. He blamed the Weimar politicians, the government. He blamed the Treaty of Versailles. He blamed the idea that the German army was stabbed in the back by the politicians. And of course, he blamed the Jews. And people wanted a scapegoat. So his message is very, very powerful. Second reason, propaganda. Joseph Goebbels, if you remember from an earlier video, he was one of Hitler's Gauleiters. Then he rose in the Nazi Party. Hitler put him in charge of propaganda, getting his message across. Mein Kampf, Hitler's book, became a bestseller. Posters appeared all over Germany. There's a very famous one of a crowd looking terribly depressed, the way people were. And then there's a picture of Hitler, and under it it said, "Our last hope." That key word again, hope. There were rallies, thousands of people out on the streets. Hitler spoke at these rallies. He had a private plane and he would jet all over Germany, speaking at 4 or 5 meetings a day. There were parades, there were marches, there were radio messages. The Nazi Party had 8 newspapers. They also had links with another right-wing party led by a man called Hugenberg, and he had a huge media empire. Altogether, the Nazis had contact with about 120 newspapers putting out the message, the Nazis are bringing you hope. Let's blame these people. If you want a better life, vote for the Nazis. The message was everywhere. Second reason, propaganda. The third reason, the SA, the Sturmabteilung, the stormtroopers or brown shirts. By 1930, there were 400,000 members of the SA, all wearing uniform, disciplined. They seemed organised. Compare that to the chaos of Germany at the time. It was very, very attractive. It was an attractive message. By 1932, membership had risen to 600,000. Now, the communists, they had their supporters, the Red Front fighters, but there were only about 130,000 of them. So the SA outnumbered them. So if there was violence on the streets, the SA would win. If they were going to disrupt a Communist Party meeting, the SA would win. So the SA are playing a part in establishing the Nazi message out on the streets. Now, I've mentioned in this video already quite a bit about communism, Stalin, the Russians, the communist message. Well, it was the other big ideology at the time. It was the other big belief. Many people feared communism. They feared what had happened in Russia in the Russian Revolution 1917, especially big businesses. So in Germany, many of the big businesses gave money to the Nazis to stop communism. The big businesses were threatened by communism, so they gave money to Hitler and Goebbels. Goebbels was able to use that money to get the propaganda message out to vote for the Nazis instead. Big industrialists, Tyson, Krupp, Bosch, Benz, Hugenberg, all supported the Nazis financially. So, for example, in the July 1932 election, the Nazi economic program, 600,000 copies were printed and distributed, so people were able to read in their own home. They were able to read Hitler's message, giving hope for the future. And the final thing, showing again probably how clever Hitler was. Hitler and the Nazis gave different messages to different groups of people. In other words, they are telling people what they want to hear. Here's a few examples of that. I've already mentioned big business. So to them, Hitler would say, look, our message is we will crush communism. The communists had an idea about abolishing private ownership of business. Well, the big business leaders would hate that. They would lose their business. They would lose their money. So Hitler said, support me. I will stop the communists. You can keep your business. You can be rich. Support me. And many of them did. Big business on Hitler's side. Then there's the working class, the people right at the bottom, the people who actually do the work in the factories. Well, to them, the Nazis stressed a different sort of message. NSDAP, S for socialist, in other words, supporting the workers. So that was the message there. Now, it didn't work all the time because many of the working class supported the communists because the communists were offering a good message to them, equality. But the Nazis had a very effective slogan for the working class: work and bread. Remember, many people were unemployed. So if they're out of work and Hitler's offering them a message of work so that you can feed your family, that will attract some working class to the Nazis. And it did. Most did still support the communists, but at least 270,000 working class would support Hitler. And of that 270,000, 150,000 were unemployed. So there's the message to those people. A different message to what he's saying to the rich businessman. But he's getting the support of both. What about the middle classes? People who did jobs that were maybe white collar, a profession. For example, shopkeepers, teachers, professionals, civil servants, smaller landowners. They feared communism. Communists said, we are going to abolish private ownership of land. We're going to own it, the whole country. But if you had some land or you had some savings, the communists were a threat. So Hitler stresses that to the middle class. Many of the middle class had lost their savings. Their wages had gone down in the Depression. So Hitler is offering hope. Vote for me and I will return you to where you used to be. Some of the middle class didn't also like some of the cultural changes in the Weimar Republic. They thought that there was a moral decline, and Hitler is promising a return to traditional family values. So that was quite attractive to some of the middle classes. And many of the middle classes supported Hitler. Another group, the farmers. Farmers feared communists, that idea of losing their land. So they hated the idea of communism. That's perfect for Hitler. Hitler will say, vote for me. I'll stop the communists threatening your land. Hitler did promise, the Nazis did promise to confiscate land, but only land that belonged to the Jews. That idea of scapegoats, blame. When the prices fell after the 1929 Wall Street crash, again farmers were struggling. And it's no surprise really to hear that over 60% of farmers supported the Nazi Party. It was an area where he was able to get a lot of support. Two more groups of people to have a look at quickly. Women. Now, for women, they were targeted by the Nazi propaganda. Hitler and Goebbels start to put forward the message, women, you are important. The importance of families, having children, mothers, being a good wife. More traditional role of women was stressed by Hitler. Now, it wouldn't appeal to everyone, but it might appeal to some women. So women were specially targeted by the Nazis to try and win their support. And the final group, youth, the young people. Now, many of the young people were attracted to the sort of idea of being in the SA, exciting, colour, uniform, marches, rallies. They were excited by Hitler's charisma, a great speaker. They liked the discipline of the SA uniform. It was attractive to them. And by 1933, 40% of those that joined the Nazi Party were aged in their 20s or 30s. So he's winning over a lot of the young people. So, ladies and gentlemen, we see there, because of what had gone on in Germany in 1929 to 32, because of all the economic problems, many Germans believed that the Nazis were providing the answers. Remember, in the lean years, 1924 to 1928, Hitler reorganized the Nazi Party. It didn't actually bring short-term success. 1928 election, under 3% voted for the Nazis. But he's got the system ready. And as soon as something happened from outside, bang, Wall Street crash. As soon as America went bankrupt and demanded all the loans back from Germany, Hitler was ready to step in with his answers, his message, and his organized party. And as we've seen, the Nazis became the largest party in those years. Well, just to finish, let's have a couple of Gcse questions. The same sort of question, but just slightly different. Here's one. Explain why the Nazi Party increased support 1929 to 1932. And then they give you two clues to write about. Depression? Hitler. Well, could you write about that? Of course you could. The depression, all the problems. Hitler, the great charismatic leader. What else could you write about though? Everything I've talked about today. The propaganda, the fear of communism, the role of Goebbels, the SA, the finance, the money, terrible things happening, the wide appeal, Hitler giving different messages to different groups of people. That would build you a good answer. Or they slightly change it. Exactly the same question, look. Explain why the Nazi Party increased support 1929 to 1932. And this time they give you two clues, Goebbels and unemployment. And you could write about Goebbels, propaganda and the message, the rise in unemployment. There we go. Bad for Germany, good for Hitler. But again, you would write about all the other factors. Hitler, fear of communism, being a great speaker, industrialists giving him financial support, the wide appeal, different messages to different groups, the SA. All of that would give you, hopefully, a very good answer. Don't worry, because I'll do a whole section of videos on the exam towards the end of the course anyway. So there we have the increased support. By 1932, the Nazi Party were the largest party. What's Hitler going to do next? 1932. Hitler's in charge of the biggest party in Germany. He needs his hands on power. Can he get it? Of course he can. How does he get it? I'll tell you in the next video. As ever, I hope it's been useful. All the best now. I'll speak to you soon. Bye now.